My name's Jake. If this is your first time watching any video I've posted, this is sort of the beginning of a journey for me in learning film, learning videography. So if things look out of whack or need to be fixed or things like that, let me know below. I appreciate that feedback. The only other video I've really posted was a review of the lens I'm filming with right now, which is a Canon 50mm on my 77D. So this is round two. We'll see if this is helpful to you or not. So I wanted to do a quick review of my Nikon D3300 before I sell it. Since I've got it in my hands, I might as well talk about it. I've owned it for about 2.5 years and have had great experience with it. Basically, when I bought this camera, didn't know a thing about how to change any settings or what to do with it, and now I would say can use everything on this camera. I've used every setting for one reason or another, I believe. So it's been a great camera to learn with and grow with. And like I said in my other video, I'm interested in more videography stuff. So didn't need to necessarily, but wanted to switch to something else that would make that process easier. And that's really my only reason for upgrading. A little bit of boredom maybe, but this has been thoroughly reliable, thoroughly helpful, and great fun to use. So just a quick overview of the camera. Right now it's got my 35mm Nikon lens on it, the f1.8. It also has a Canon lens cap because I lost the Nikon one over a waterfall. Get some weird looks because of that. But anyway, it's got 35mm lens on it, and you can see the profile is really small. It's a very small camera. I think this is about as small as DSLRs come. I have not held one smaller than this. Very simple controls. You've got your main control dial on top. Apologize for that. Main control dial on top with the different functions, manual mode, aperture priority, all that stuff. You've got your main adjustment dial on back. This is adjusted with your thumb, which I'll compare to the Canon. You have an index wheel here, so having this on my thumb and learning that process, I have missed that a little bit with the Canon. This one, you can have your finger directly on the shutter, be just ready to shoot and make some small adjustments to your shutter speed or whatever you may need to, and not have to move that finger, versus the Canon, you're up here adjusting and then going back. It's small, but I figured I'd mention it. You've got an autofocus lock or an auto exposure lock. I've started using that a little bit more as I learned what that meant and how that was helpful. And it's nice that it is so easily accessible right there along with the control dial. You've got a little D-pad on the back. It is tiny and not very helpful in my opinion when it comes to using like live view focus or anything like that. If you go into your live view setting and you're trying to scroll across the screen, it does this thing where it's really slow, then it'll speed up really fast and you'll go past what you want, and you kind of come back really slow and it goes past again. In other words, it's not very helpful, and has taught me to not use live view if at all possible. But getting through menus, it's fine. You can click up and down, you can do everything you need to there. Live view button is right here, which is convenient if you are going to do video or if you really need to use that screen versus the viewfinder itself. You've got your shooting mode down here. It's convenient again that it's one button to access it. With the Canon, there's one of the D-pad directions. When you push that, it'll bring it up. So they're both accessible technically by one button press. You got your trash can for deleting photos. I will tell you that on this camera, I don't have a memory card in it, so I can't show you firsthand, but on this camera, you can double press the trash can to delete photos from your album. So if you're scrolling through and you realize you don't want something, just double tap, and without a thought, it's gone. That could be good when you're trying to delete multiple photos at once, or you don't want to spend a lot of time with that. It can be really bad when you delete something you don't intend to, but I have liked this. I know a lot of people won't even delete photos until they get them onto their computer anyway, but I've appreciated having the simple way to delete versus on my Canon. You push the button, it brings up a menu, you have to scroll over to erase, I think is what it says, and then you have to push OK, or you can tap on the screen, but it does take longer on the Canon than on the Nikon. Just a side thought. On the other side, you've got your gallery button to open your images, menu to bring up your menu, zoom. Zooming on this camera is also kind of frustrating because of the D-pad and because of the lack of touchscreen. I should have mentioned this before, but the D-pad for focus is annoying for the same reason. Without a touchscreen on this camera, without a flip-out touchscreen like almost every other DSLR has at this point, to get your focus point set and then to zoom in to review a photo takes a lot longer. You gotta click this to get zoomed in as much as you want, then you gotta shuffle around with the little D-pad. I've really appreciated on the Canon, if I'm gonna focus, tap, it's focused. Or if I'm gonna zoom in on a picture, pinch to zoom just like a cell phone or anything else, and it'll be right where I want it. But you've got them if you're gonna review your pictures in camera, and it has worked. It's worked well enough for the last 2.5 years. I've made it through. I haven't died or anything like that. And then this, apologize. And then this info button is helpful. It really just brings up your settings for the quick settings for white balance and flash mode and focus mode and stuff like that. I don't use it too much, but it's nice to have it whenever you do want to change something and you don't want to get all into the menu, the deep menu there. On the other side, you got a remote shutter release port here and then a microphone port here. Like I said, I'm learning video. I started learning video on this, and I used an external mic, a shotgun mic on top, so that did come in handy. Never used a remote shutter release because I've always just used a self-timer if I was going to do a long exposure or a group photo or something like that. But if you want one, there's a port for that. And then on the bottom, you've got an AV out and an HDMI out. So if you want to send videos and photos you've taken directly to a TV, you can review them. It's nice to have. I will say something I appreciate with this is that it came with a video cable, like the standard component cable, I believe, like the yellow and the white cable to plug in directly to a TV, versus my Canon, which I did buy secondhand in their defense, but I bought it secondhand and they said they included everything. There was not any sort of video out cable, so there was no way for me to connect it without buying something aftermarket. On the other side, you've got a function button here that can be programmed to focus. I think it's focus mode and then exposure mode, and I've got it set for ISO, so you can do some basic settings with that. I've kept it at ISO. I've kept it set as an ISO control button since I got the camera. It's, in my opinion, it's incredibly convenient to have. Your shutter speed by default, when you're in manual mode, your shutter speed will by default be controlled by this thumb wheel. Then if you hold this, the aperture control button right next to the shutter button, you get into the aperture control. So you've got those two easily accessible. And then if you're holding it with two hands, you got your ISO button right here, and then you can control your ISO with the same dial. So you've got two buttons, and that's all you need to be able to adjust your three main settings, your exposure triangle, whatever you want to say. And then above it, you've got the flash. Don't use the flash on this camera if you want good photos. I have never taken a photo that I thought was worth keeping with the flash on this camera. I've used some off-camera flash that's been all right, or not off-camera, but hot shoe mounted flash that's been all right. But yeah, wouldn't recommend this unless it's like I have to get this photo and I don't care if it looks probably like garbage. But it's there if you need it. And then again on top, you've got your aperture control button right here. You would just press and hold that while you adjust. Oops, just took a photo. But you would just press and hold that while you adjust the dial if you want to change your aperture. You've got an info button here that will change what displays on your screen. So if you're taking a video and you want to see your mic levels, you adjust that, or you change that setting screen with this button here. You can have the grid lines pop up if you're trying to compose a certain way. I've probably for the first year and a half that I own this, I never used that button, and I never even tried playing with it. And then I started playing with it and realized how helpful that is. So that is very convenient. And then you've got your record button for video. Don't buy this camera if your sole purpose is to do video, or if you are confident you will want to learn video in the future. The reason being, the focus system in it is just not up to par with anything Canon has to offer, or a lot of different mirrorless manufacturers, Sony, things like that, that they have so much better video-based focus that it's just going to drive you crazy every time you try to use this. I know a lot of videographers will just use manual focus, and if that's your thing, then maybe this is the right option for you. But I have never thought, wow, this is a convenient camera for video. You also cannot, just on the topic of video, when you're in live view mode, you cannot adjust the aperture, which for photography isn't as frustrating, because normally you're going to stay in a general range. You know, if I wanted it at f5.6, I'm probably going to leave it there for a while if I'm working on the same composition. But if you're doing video and you want to be able to quickly adjust that, you're going to want to look elsewhere as far as camera options. You get a decent amount of display on the back as far as information. You've got your light meter, you've got aperture, shutter speed, ISO. You get your different focus modes and all that displayed there. I won't go too much in detail on that. As far as technical specs or capability of the camera, it's a 24, I believe it's a 24.2 megapixel sensor with no anti-aliasing filter. I believe that has something to do with like light streaks and stuff that might come off the sun. If I'm wrong, let me know below. But it's a filter that other manufacturers such as Canon put on their sensors to prevent some sort of issue, and Nikon doesn't use those. If you see a side-by-side comparison of a photo taken with a Nikon sensor and a Canon sensor, the Canon will technically have a little bit less detail. So far, I haven't noticed any issues, and honestly, you're not going to notice it in day-to-day use. But if you're a pixel peeper, if you're really concerned about just the absolute best detail, this has a step up over Canon at a similar price range because of the lack of that filter. I've had great photos taken with it. It seems to do a good job with color reproduction and dynamic range and all the basics of a good sensor. I've printed as large as 16 by 20, a landscape photo. I had taken it with a kit lens, so it didn't even have the best quality coming in, but from a normal viewing distance, you're not going to notice any problems. You can really get up close and realize you get a little bit of softness, but that has more to do with the lens than the camera body anyway. So in summary, the sensor's great, and you're not going to be disappointed with it. Excuse me. The focus system in this is something I wanted to talk about. I mentioned that for video, you're not going to want this, or you're going to be sort of hindered by it. So this camera, this body has 11 focus points, which is dramatically less than most other cameras on the market, at least current models. At the time, it wasn't bad, but it's really not great. I believe that one of them is a phase detection autofocus point, the center one, and then all the others are contrast based. If I'm wrong about those names, I apologize, but what you need to know is that the center one's going to be more accurate than the outside ones. So really you have one good focus point, and then you have some others that are going to sort of work. They might give you some frustrations or might be a little bit less than accurate. I'll be honest though, for the first probably 2 years that I used this, did not miss having 100 autofocus points or anything like that. I didn't notice that 11 was a low number until I started playing with some other models, other bodies and other camera manufacturers' models, and realizing that, like, wow, it is convenient to have more than 11 options of where you're going to focus, especially when you have a specific setting you want, or a specific composition you want, and you really just want to get that focus point right on, you know, someone's eye in a portrait, or a specific rock in a landscape or something like that. I got really used to focusing and recomposing, where you find your focus point and then you move. But then especially if you're at a low aperture, you have to worry about losing focus because you're changing perspective and things like that. So when it comes to focus, this will get you by. It's a great learning tool. Do not expect it to do anything miraculous. And when it comes to video, just don't use autofocus. It does the thing where it hunts past what you're focusing on, and then it comes back to it. So if you're on a person, it'll constantly shoot past them and then come back, shoot past them and come back. And you're going to get a lot of really jittery video. And then with most lenses that I've used, including this 35mm, it's a loud enough focus motor that even with a shotgun mic, you're getting a lot of that ratcheting sound or the whir sound. So my recommendation would be, if you're going to do video, see if you could save for something else or look at some other options. If you're going to do photos and you're advanced, if you consider yourself, you know, fully aware of what manual controls are and all that, and you're wanting to do some more in-depth stuff, you probably want something with a little bit better focus system than this. But if you're a beginner, if you're intermediate, and you know you just want something small, something capable that will give you great photos with some work, this is a wonderful option. Like I said, when I bought this camera, I couldn't tell you what aperture did, what shutter speed did, what ISO did, any of that stuff, and just having a simple body like this that had simple controls helps me a lot in being able to figure out what each variable did, and it's survived a lot of different kind of rugged trips. Took it along some waterfalls in Honduras. I took it to Texas for some canyon hiking and other things like that, and I've never had any issues with it performance-wise or with any sort of function. Battery life's been pretty darn good. I think I usually get about 700 shots. I've got one Nikon battery, and then I've got one aftermarket battery, and haven't had any issues there as far as being able to get through a day with those two. But that's just photography, so if you're a videographer, that may be different. Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than if you're a beginner or an intermediate photographer and you're looking for something to get you in the door, maybe it's a second camera, maybe it's a travel camera, this is a wonderful option, affordable option. If you're into video or you're a videographer, or if you are what you would consider an intermediate to advanced photographer, you're wanting to do some professional work, you're going to need some more function than what this offers. I'm sure you could technically do it, but you're going to get by a lot easier with even something like a higher-end Canon or a higher-end Nikon model that has some more focus points, has the flip touchscreen or things like that. For amateur use or for recreational use, you'll get it done with this. This will do the job. But anyway, I hope that was helpful to you. And if you have any feedback on either the camera itself, the Canon, settings I'm using with video, this waterfall behind me, let me know in the comments below. The reason I came out to film this in the woods rather than my house is it finally got above 40 today, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on where you're watching, and stuff started thawing, so I figured it was worth getting out, enjoying the sunlight, and sharing some of that with you. So again, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think. Thanks.